Zephyra felt the fever burning through her small body as she sat in the corner of the medical bay. Her pale blue feathers were dull and falling out in patches. Red spots covered her thin arms and neck. The other Cytherians moved away from her. When she tried to walk past them, even the medical staff wore thick masks and gloves when they had to come near her. The crimson rot had taken hold 3 days ago. First came the fever, then the red marks on her skin, then the terrible weakness. That made her wings feel like they were made of stone. She could barely lift her head now. The disease moved fast through Cytherian bodies. Most who caught it died within a week. Her bondmate Thylo sat across the room, his golden eyes full of sadness. He wanted to come closer, but the law was clear. No one could touch the infected. No one could risk catching the disease. The survival of their people came first, always. "The council will meet tonight," Thylo said softly. His voice barely reached her across the room. "They will decide what to do." Zephyra already knew what they would decide. She had grown up hearing the old stories. When the crimson rot appeared, the infected had to be removed from the ship. It was the only way to save everyone else. The law was thousands of years old. It had kept their species alive through many plagues. "I understand," she whispered back. Speaking hurt her throat, but she needed him to know. "I would make the same choice." But even as she said the words, her heart broke. She was only 24 years old. She had planned to see the new colony world. She had wanted to start a family with Thylos. She had dreamed of growing food in alien soil and watching strange suns rise over new mountains. Now she would die alone, on some empty moon or asteroid, wherever they decided to leave her. That night, the council met in the main hall of the colony ship. Zephyra could not attend because of her condition, but Thylos went to speak for her. The ship held 3,000 Cytherians, all traveling to establish a new home on Verdania Prime. They had been flying for 2 years already. They could not risk the entire mission for one sick person. Elder Myrus, the oldest and wisest of their people, spoke first. His voice was heavy with sadness but firm with duty. "The law is clear. The infected must be removed from the ship. We cannot risk the spread of the disease." Some of the younger Cytherians argued. They said the medical bay could be sealed off. They said maybe the doctors could find a cure. But the elders had seen plagues before. They knew how fast the crimson rot could spread. In the old days, entire ships had been lost when they tried to save the infected. Thylo stood up, his hands shaking. "She is my bondmate. Let me stay with her. Let me share her fate." Elder Myrus shook his head slowly. "You are not infected. You have value to our people. You will help build the new colony. You will have children and continue our species. This is the way it must be." The vote was not even close. Only 12 Cytherians voted to try to save Zephyra. The rest, nearly 300 who attended the meeting, voted for removal. It was not cruel, they told themselves. It was necessary. It was survival. The next morning, they brought Zephyra to the shuttle bay. She could barely walk. 2 medical staff helped her into a small escape pod. They gave her water for a week, food for 5 days, and a basic medical kit that would not help her condition at all. They also gave her an old emergency beacon that would broadcast her location on frequencies that most ships no longer monitored. "It is a kindness," one of the medical staff said as they sealed her into the pod. The beacon might bring help, but they both knew it would not. The beacon used old technology. Modern ships did not listen to those channels anymore. The beacon was just meant to make them feel better about what they were doing. Thylos was not allowed to say goodbye. He stood at the observation window, watching as they loaded her pod into the launch tube. His golden eyes met her pale blue ones through the small window of the pod. Neither of them spoke, but she could see him mouth the words, "I love you," as the pod launched. The pod carried her away from the colony ship and toward the small, gray moon called Kalos 7, It was a dead world with thin air and no life. The automated systems in the pod found a flat place to land near some old caves. The pod's computer voice told her she could survive for maybe 10 days if she was careful with her supplies. ZEPHYRI crawled out of the pod and looked up at the strange pink sky. 2 small suns hung low on the horizon, giving everything a weird reddish light. The air was thin and cold, but she could breathe it. Her lungs hurt with each breath, but that might have been the disease. She found a cave near the landing site and dragged her supplies inside. The work exhausted her, and she had to rest for an hour after moving just a few boxes. The red spots on her skin were spreading, and her fever was getting worse. As night fell on the lonely moon, Zephyra activated the emergency beacon. She did not expect anyone to answer it, but it made her feel a little less alone. The steady beeping sound echoed in the cave as she wrapped herself in the thin blanket they had given her. She looked up at the alien stars through the cave opening and thought about Thylos. She hoped he would be happy on the new world. She hoped he would find someone else to love and have the children they had planned together. She tried not to think about dying alone in this cold, empty place. The beacon kept beeping into the darkness, sending its hopeless message to the empty space around the dead moon. Jake Morrison was having a bad week. His salvage ship, the Wanderer, had broken down twice in the past 5 days. The coffee maker was making strange noises, and he was down to his last pack of ration bars. Worse, he had not found any good scrap. In this system, the asteroid fields were picked clean by other salvage crews. He sat in his pilot chair, scratching his beard and looking at the scanner display. Nothing but empty space and a few worthless rocks. His ship was small, just big enough for one person with a tiny cargo hold and basic life support. It was not much, but it was home. Still no luck finding anything valuable, Jake, said Arya, his ship's computer. The artificial intelligence had a female voice that Jake had programmed to sound friendly. Sometimes Arya was the only company he had for weeks. Yeah, I know, Jake said. He was 35 years old, with brown hair and tired eyes. He had been a military medic before becoming a salvage operator. The pay was better, and no one shot at him anymore. Most of the time, Jake had been flying alone for 3 years now. He liked the quiet of space. He liked being his own boss. He did not like the loneliness, but he told himself it was worth it for the freedom. His scanner beeped. Jake looked at the display and frowned. Arya, what's that signal? It appears to be an emergency beacon, Jake. Very old frequency. Pre-war technology, I would estimate. Jake leaned forward. Emergency beacons meant people in trouble. People in trouble sometimes meant reward money if he could help them. But old beacons usually meant dead people and no reward. Where's it coming from? The moon Kalos 7. It's been broadcasting for approximately 3 weeks. 3 weeks was a long time for someone to survive on that dead rock. Jake had been to Kalos 7 before. No air worth breathing, no water, no life. If someone was still alive there after 3 weeks, they were either very lucky or very tough. Could be automated, Jake said to himself. Probably just a crashed probe or something. Most likely, Arya agreed. The signal is very weak. Whatever is broadcasting, it does not have much power left. Jake stared at the scanner. He should ignore it. Old emergency beacons were almost always false alarms or automated systems from long-dead ships. Checking them out was a waste of time and fuel. Smart salvage operators learned to ignore them, but Jake had been a medic once. He had taken an oath to help people. Old habits died hard. Plot a course for Kalos 7, he said. Jake, I must advise against this. The probability of finding anything valuable is very low. We need to conserve fuel. Just do it, Arya. The computer sighed, which was a sound Jake had programmed in during a lonely night a year ago. Course plotted. ETA is 4 hours. Jake fired up the engines and headed for the small moon. As he flew, he thought about the last time he had answered a distress call. It had been a transport ship with engine trouble. The captain had paid him well for the repair work. Maybe this would be another easy job. 4 hours later, Jake was in orbit around Kalos 7. The moon looked as dead as ever. Gray rocks, thin atmosphere. Nothing growing anywhere. His scanner found the beacon signal coming from near the equator. "I'm reading a small landing pod near the beacon source," Arya reported. "Catherian design, I believe." Jake knew about Catherians, bird-like aliens with advanced technology but weak bodies. They rarely traveled far from their home worlds. What was one doing out here on this dead moon? Any signs of life? "I'm detecting one very faint life sign inside a cave near the pod." "But Jake, I must warn you. If this is a Catherian, they may be carrying diseases that could harm you." Jake thought about that. Catherians were known to be very careful about disease. If one was abandoned on this moon, there might be a good reason. But the life sign was faint. Whoever was down there was dying. "I'm going down to take a look. Jake, this is not wise. You could be exposing yourself to unknown pathogens. I'll wear a suit. Do a full decon when I get back." Jake landed his ship near the cave. He put on his environmental suit and checked his medical kit. If someone was hurt, he might be able to help. He had been a good medic once. He still remembered most of what he had learned. The cave was dark and cold. Jake's suit lights cut through the shadows as he walked deeper inside. He found her in a small chamber, wrapped in a thin blanket. She was small, maybe 5 feet tall, with pale blue feathers and thin, bird-like features. Her breathing was shallow and rapid. Red spots covered her exposed skin. Jake had never seen anything like them, but they looked like some kind of infection. The alien woman was very sick. "Hello," Jake said softly. "Can you understand me?" The Catherian opened her pale blue eyes. She looked at Jake with surprise and fear. "Human?" She whispered in accented English. "Yeah, I'm human. My name is Jake. I picked up your distress signal." "You should not be here," she said weakly. "I am infected. Dangerous." Jake knelt down beside her, keeping his distance but close enough to scan her with his medical tricorder. Her body temperature was dangerously high. Her pulse was fast and weak. She was dehydrated and malnourished. "What's your name?" Jake asked. "Zephyra. My people had to leave me here. The law requires it." Jake felt anger rising in his chest. "They left you here to die? To save the others. The disease spreads quickly among my people. They had no choice." Jake looked at her supplies. Almost gone. Water for maybe 1 more day. The food was finished. She had been living on almost nothing. For 3 weeks. "Well, I'm here now," Jake said. "And I'm not leaving you to die." Zephyra closed her eyes. "You do not understand. The crimson rot kills quickly. You cannot help me. You should go before you catch it too." Jake stood up and looked around the cave. He could carry her back to his ship. His medical bay was basic, but it had everything he needed to keep someone alive. He did not know anything about Catherian diseases, but he knew about keeping people breathing and their hearts beating. "Maybe I can't cure you," Jake said, "but I can try. And I'm not leaving you here alone." He went back to his ship and got a stretcher. When he returned, Zephyra was unconscious. Jake carefully lifted her onto the stretcher and carried her to the Wanderer. Arya protested the entire way, warning about contamination and unknown diseases. Jake ignored the computer and got Zephyra settled in his medical bay. She was dying, but she was not dead yet. And as long as she was alive, Jake was going to fight for her. Jake had never worked so hard in his life. For 2 days he barely slept. He barely ate. All his attention was focused on keeping Zephyra alive. The small medical bay of his ship was filled with the sound of beeping machines and his own heavy breathing as he worked. Her temperature is rising again, Jake, Arya warned. This is the 5th fever spike in 12 hours. Jake wiped sweat from his forehead and looked at the monitors. Zephyr's body temperature was climbing toward dangerous levels. The red spots on her skin were spreading faster now. Whatever this crimson rot disease was, being moved to a ship had made it worse. Give me options, Arya. What can I do to bring her temperature down? I have already told you, Jake, you need to let her go. This disease is beyond your capabilities, and you are risking your own life. Jake ignored the computer and reached for another cooling pack. He placed it gently on Zephyr's forehead. She was so small and fragile. Her bird-like features were pale, and her breathing was getting weaker. I'm not giving up on her, Jake said firmly. He had spent the last 2 days learning everything he could about Catherian biology. His ship's computer had some basic information about their species. Catherians had faster metabolisms than humans. Their hearts beat twice as fast. Their body temperature was normally higher. But this fever was killing her. Jake tried everything he knew. Cooling blankets, fever reducers, 4 fluids to keep her hydrated. Nothing seemed to work for long. The disease would retreat for a few hours, then come back stronger. On the 3rd day, Jake was exhausted. He had not slept more than 20 minutes. At a time, his hands were shaking from too much coffee and too little rest. He sat beside Zephyr's bed and watched her struggle to breathe. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. Her voice was so weak he had to lean close to hear her. Jake looked at her pale blue eyes. "Because you're alive. Because you don't deserve to die alone, but I am infected. Your people will cast you out if they learn you helped me." Jake almost laughed. "Humans don't work that way. We don't abandon our own. And we sure don't abandon people who need help." Zephyr closed her eyes. "My people say humans are dangerous. That you fight everything, even death itself." "Maybe we do," Jake said. "Maybe that's not such a bad thing." That night, Jake had an idea. It was crazy, but everything else had failed. He had been treating Zephyr like a human patient. But she was not human. Maybe human medicine could work differently on her biology. "Arya, run a comparison between human and Catherian immune systems." "Jake, you should be sleeping. You have been awake for 36 hours. Just do it." The computer ran the analysis. After an hour, Arya had some interesting information. Human immune systems are much more aggressive than Catherian systems. Humans evolved to fight diseases that would kill most other species. Jake sat up straighter. "What does that mean?" "It means human blood contains antibodies and immune factors that might help fight this disease." "But Jake, this is extremely dangerous. You could kill her if you try a blood transfusion." "Could kill her? She's already dying. What about a smaller amount? Just enough to boost her immune system? The risk is enormous. Human blood could be toxic to a Catherian." Jake looked at Zephyr. Her breathing was getting worse. The red spots now covered most of her body. She had maybe hours left, not days. "Prepare a small blood sample from me. Just a few drops. We'll test it on her skin first, see if there's a reaction." "Jake, I cannot recommend this course of action." "I'm not asking for your recommendation. I'm giving you an order." Jake drew his own blood and carefully applied a tiny amount to a small patch of Zephyr's skin. For an hour, nothing happened. Then the red spots in that area began to fade slightly. "Arya, are you seeing this?" "Yes, Jake. The infection appears to be retreating in the test area. But this could be a coincidence." Jake did not think it was a coincidence. He prepared a small injection of his blood, diluted with saline solution. His hands were steady now, focused by hope and desperation. "Zephyr," he said softly, "I want to try something. It might help. It might not, but I need you to trust me." She opened her eyes and looked at him. "You have already done more than anyone has ever done for me. I trust you. Jake gave her the injection. Then he waited. For the first hour, nothing changed. Zephyra's condition stayed the same. Jake began to think his crazy idea had failed. Then slowly, her temperature began to drop. The red spots stopped spreading. Her breathing became easier. Jake, Arya said quietly, her vital signs are improving. Over the next 6 hours, Zephyra got better. Not completely well, but better than she had been since Jake found her. The fever broke. The red spots began to fade. She was able to sit up and drink water without help. How do you feel? Jake asked. Weak, but better, the pain is less. She looked at him with wonder. What did you do? I shared some of my blood. With you. Human immune systems are tough. I thought maybe it would help yours fight the disease. You gave me your blood? But that could have killed you. What if you caught the crimson rot? Jake shrugged. Then we would have been sick together. But I don't think humans can catch your disease. We're too different. Zephyra stared at him. You risked your life to save someone you do not even know. Someone from a different species. Why? Jake thought about that question. Because it was the right thing to do. Because everyone deserves a chance to live. Because ... He paused, trying to find the right words. Because that's what humans do. We don't give up on people. Over the next day, Zephyra continued to improve. The disease was still in her system, but her body was fighting it now. Jake's blood had given her immune system the boost it needed. I do not understand your species, she said, as Jake helped her walk around the medical bay. The galaxy says humans are violent and unpredictable. We can be, Jake admitted, but we're also stubborn. When we decide something is worth fighting for, we don't quit. Even when everyone says we should. My people would call this foolish. Jake smiled. Yeah, probably, but your people left you to die. Sometimes being foolish is better than being logical. Zephyra was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was thoughtful. Perhaps there is wisdom in your foolishness. Jake woke up 3 days later feeling like he had been hit by a transport ship. His whole body ached and his head felt heavy. When he tried to sit up, the room spun around him. He fell back onto his bunk, breathing hard. Jake, you need to stay. In bed, Zephyra said from the doorway. She looked much better now. The red spots were almost gone from her skin, and her blue feathers had some of their shine back. But her eyes were worried as she looked at him. I'm fine, Jake said, but his voice came out weak and scratchy. Just tired. You are not fine. You have been sick for 2 days, I think. I think the treatment that saved me has made you ill. Jake tried to laugh, but it turned into a cough. That's not how it works. Humans can't Catherian diseases. But even as he said it, Jake knew something was wrong. The room felt too hot, then too cold. His skin itched in strange places. When he looked at his arms, he could see faint red marks appearing. Arya, he called out. Run a medical scan on me. Already running, Jake. Your vital signs are abnormal. Body temperature elevated, heart rate irregular. I'm detecting traces of the crimson rot pathogen in your bloodstream. Jake closed his eyes. That's impossible. Apparently not, Arya said dryly. It seems the disease can affect humans, but differently than it affects Catherians. Your immune system is fighting it, but the battle is making you very sick. Zephyra came into the room and sat beside his bed. I am so sorry, Jake. This is my fault. I should have stopped you from helping me. Don't be stupid, Jake said, though his voice was gentle. I made my choice. I'd make it again. Over the next few hours, Jake got sicker. The red marks spread across his skin, but they were different from Zephyra's symptoms. Instead of the bright crimson spots she had suffered, Jake's marks were darker, more like bruises. His fever was lower, but constant. The worst part was the pain in his joints that made it hard to move. Zephyra stayed with him, just as he had stayed with her. She brought him water and tried to keep him comfortable. She had never taken care of a sick human before, but she did her best. "Your people will be angry when they learn what you did," Jake said during one of his clearer moments. "Helping someone they cast out, breaking their laws." "I do not care about their laws anymore," Zephyra said quietly. "You showed me something my people have forgotten. Sometimes doing the right thing is more important than following rules." Jake managed a weak smile. "That's very human of you to say. Perhaps I have learned something from humans." On the fourth day of Jake's illness, Arya detected ships approaching. Their location. Long-range scanners showed 3 vessels with Catherian design signatures. "Jake, we have company," Arya announced. "Catherian patrol ships. They're hailing us." Jake struggled to sit up. He was feeling a little better, but still weak. "Put them through." The main screen flickered to life, showing a Catherian male with dark green feathers and cold golden eyes. His uniform marked him as a high-ranking officer. "Human vessel, this is Commander Vexus of the Catherian Defense Fleet. We have detected one of our people aboard your ship. You will surrender her immediately." "She's not your people anymore," Jake said, his voice hoarse but firm. "You abandoned her, left her to die. The infected one was lawfully removed from our ship according to our ancient customs. You had no right to interfere. Return her now and submit to quarantine procedures." Jake looked at Zephyra, who had gone very pale. She was afraid of her own people, afraid of what they would do to both of them. "What kind of quarantine procedures?" Jake asked. "You have been exposed to the crimson rot. You must be isolated until we determine if you are infected. If you are carrying the disease, you will be disposed of according to our laws." "Disposed of?" Jake felt anger burning through his weakness. "You mean murdered." "We mean protected the galaxy from a dangerous plague. Your interference has created a risk to all spacefaring species." Zephyra stepped forward, her hands shaking but her voice steady. "Commander Vexus, I am no longer infected. The human found the cure. We could help our people instead of continuing to abandon the sick." Commander Vexus looked disgusted. "You have been contaminated by human ideas. There is no cure for the crimson rot. There is only prevention through proper removal of the infected." "But there is a cure," Zephyra insisted. "Human blood can boost our immune systems enough to fight the disease." Jake proved it. "Impossible. And even if true, we would never contaminate ourselves with alien blood. The very idea is disgusting." Jake stood up slowly, using the wall for support. "Then you're idiots. Your people are dying from something that could be cured, and you won't. Try because you think you're too good for help. Silence, human. You will surrender the infected Catherian and submit to judgment, or we will destroy your ship." "No," Jake said simply. Commander Vexus looked surprised. "No? You heard me. I'm not giving her back to you. And I'm not letting you murder either of us because you're afraid of a disease we've already beaten. You cannot fight 3 military vessels with your small salvage ship." Jake looked at Arya's tactical display. The commander was right. 3 armed patrol ships against his little salvage vessel was no contest. But Jake had been in the military once. He knew how to think tactically. "Maybe not in a straight fight," Jake said. "But I don't plan to fight fair." "Jake, what are you doing?" Zephyra whispered. "What humans do best," Jake replied. "Something crazy that just might work." He turned back to the screen. "Commander Vexus, I'm going to give you one chance to leave. Walk away now and nobody gets hurt." The Catherian commander looked at him like he was insane. "You are threatening us? 1 human against 3 ships?" "Yeah," Jake said, his voice getting stronger despite his illness. "I am, because someone has to stand up to bullies who abandon their own people. Someone has to say that leaving people to die is wrong. If that someone has to be me, then so be it." Commander Vexus cut the transmission. On Arya's scanner, Jake could see the 3 ships moving into attack formation. "Jake," the Furra said softly, "you cannot win this fight." Jake sat down at his pilot's chair and started powering up his ship's systems. His hands were steady now, focused by purpose and anger. "Maybe not," he said, "but I can make it expensive for them. And sometimes that's enough." Jake fired up his ship's engines and headed straight for the asteroid field near Kalos 7. The 3 Catherian patrol ships followed him, their weapons charging. Arya was calculating escape routes, but they all looked hopeless. "Jake, this is suicide," the computer said. "Their ships are faster and better armed. We cannot outrun them or outfight them." "I'm not trying to outrun them," Jake said, his hands dancing over the controls. "I'm trying to outsmart them." The lead Catherian ship fired a warning shot that passed close to the Wanderer's hull. Jake ignored it and dove deeper into the asteroid field. The rocks here were big and moved in unpredictable patterns. It was dangerous for any ship, but Jake had been salvaging in fields like this for years. "Human vessel, stop immediately, or we will destroy you." Commander Vexus's voice crackled over the radio. Jake switched on his ship's broadcast system, so his voice would reach all 3 enemy ships. "I've got a better idea. How about you listen to what I have to say before you start shooting? There is nothing you can say that will change our decision." "Maybe, but what if I told you that your whole approach to the Crimson Rot is wrong?" "What?" "If I told you there's a way to save your people instead of abandoning them?" Jake spun his ship around a large asteroid, using its gravity to slingshot toward another cluster of rocks. The Catherian ships followed, but they were being more careful. They did not know the asteroid field like Jake did. "We have heard these lies from the infected one," Commander Vexus replied. "Human blood cannot cure our diseases." "Then explain why Zephyra is alive and healthy," Jake said. He was steering one-handed now, using his other hand to work on something Arya could not see. "Explain why she's been free of the Crimson Rot for a week." There was silence from the Catherian ships for several minutes. Jake used the time to position himself near a particularly large asteroid with deep caves running through it. "Even if this is true," Commander Vexus finally said, "we cannot accept contamination with alien blood. It is against our nature. Your nature is killing your people." Jake replied, "How many Catherians have died from the Crimson Rot? How many have you abandoned on dead worlds? That is the price of survival." Jake felt his anger flare up again. "That's the price of being too proud to accept help." He dove his ship into one of the asteroid's caves. It was a tight fit, and Arya was complaining about the danger, but Jake knew what he was doing. The cave system ran all the way through the asteroid. If he could make it to the other side before the Catherians figured out where he was going, he might have a chance. "Jake, what is your plan?" Zephyra asked. She was strapped into the co-pilot seat, watching the rock walls flash past the viewports. "I'm going to give them a demonstration," Jake said. "Show them that sometimes the crazy human way works better than the logical alien way." Jake burst out of the asteroid cave and immediately fired his ship's mining lasers at the rock around the exit. The powerful beams cut deep into the asteroid, destabilizing its structure. Cracks appeared along the surface, and chunks of rock began breaking away. The 3 Catherian ships were on the other side of the asteroid, searching for him. When Jake appeared, they moved to attack positions. But Jake was already executing the second part of his plan. He fired his mining lasers at 3 specific points on the asteroid's surface. Arya had calculated the exact spots needed to crack the rock in just the right way. The asteroid shuddered and began to break apart. "All ships, move away from the asteroid," Jake broadcast. "It's going to fragment in about 30 seconds. The Catherian ships scrambled to get clear as huge chunks of rock began flying in all directions. But Jake stayed close to the breaking asteroid, using the flying debris as cover. His small ship could dodge between the rocks more easily than the larger patrol vessels. "This is madness," Commander Vexus shouted over the radio. "You will get us all killed. Only if you keep trying to fight instead of talking," Jake replied. One of the asteroid fragments was heading straight for the second Cytherian ship. The vessel tried to move, but it was not fast enough. Jake saw what was happening and made a split-second decision. He fired his ship's grappling cables at the asteroid chunk and used his engines to pull it off course. The rock missed the Cytherian ship by only a few meters. Jake's ship shook from the strain, and warning lights flashed all over his control panel. "Why did you do that?" Commander Vexus demanded. "We are your enemies." Jake was breathing hard from the effort, but his voice was steady. "Because you're people. Because nobody deserves to die just because they're wrong about something." There was a long silence. When Commander Vexus spoke again, his voice was different. Less angry, more confused. "You saved our ship, even though we came here to destroy you." "That's what humans do," Zephyr said, speaking into the radio for the first time. "They do not abandon people, even their enemies." Jake brought his ship to a stop in clear space, away from the asteroid debris. The three Cytherian ships surrounded him, but their weapons were no longer charging. "Commander Vexus," Jake said, "I'm going to make you an offer. Let me and Zephyr go, and I'll share everything I learned about treating the Crimson Rot. Your people don't have to keep abandoning the sick. We can work together to save lives." "And if I refuse?" Jake looked at his tactical display. He was still outnumbered and outgunned. But something had changed in the last few minutes. The Cytherians were listening now instead of just attacking. "Then you go back to your people and tell them you had a chance to save lives, but you chose to protect your pride instead. And every person who dies from the Crimson Rot after today, their blood is on your hands." Another long silence. Finally, Commander Vexus spoke. "You would really share this cure with us? Even after we threaten to kill you? If it saves lives, yes." "Why?" Jake thought about that question. "Because that's what the galaxy needs more of. People helping each other instead of abandoning each other. Because maybe if we work together, we can all be a little more human." Commander Vexus was quiet for several minutes. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "Perhaps there is wisdom in your madness, human. We will escort you to a neutral station where our medical staff can examine this cure you claim to have found." Jake smiled and felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. "Thank you, Commander." As the small fleet headed toward the nearest space station, Zephyra took Jake's hand. "You did it," she said softly. "You changed their minds." "We did it," Jake corrected. "And this is just the beginning. We're going to save a lot of lives together." Looking out at the stars, Jake felt something he had not felt in years. Hope. Maybe humans and aliens could work together after all. Maybe the galaxy could be a place where people helped each other instead of abandoning each other. Maybe being human was exactly what the universe needed.